pitch. It is terrible. Do you guys know what Whole30 is? Basically the worst thing ever. It's 30 days of like no carbs and no dairy and no sugar. So basically all foods that are super good. Scott, Ro, and Bonnie were on it, and maybe I could try it. The problem is Katie's not doing it, so I'm flying solo, and it is the worst. Day 11. So almost a third of the way. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's really fun to be back up here. I got to speak the first couple of weeks of Cru, and I'm excited to be back here tonight because this honestly is my favorite month of the year in the Cru calendar, I guess you could say, because it's Govember. And I love Govember because this month is all about going. That's what this month is about. And with a month dedicated to going, we kind of heard from Jordan a couple weeks ago, and he talked about having a heart for people that don't know who Jesus is. Last week, Scott led us through having compassion and even awareness of the world and how people don't even have access to know who Jesus is. And so the hope is that this month is not just come to Cru Thursday night, hear a 25-minute talk, and that's a good nugget, but we want to actually go. We want to actually act on this stuff. And so there's been things this month like Fill the Feast, which has been a month where as a movement we've said we're going to go out and we're going to try to meet people. We're going to try to have conversations with them, even though it feels scary and risky. And even more than doing things, really is for a mind shift this month, because I think our default is to want to stay safe. And so this month is kind of meant to get us out of our box. I need stuff like this, get us out of our comfort zone, and even give us a bigger view of what God's up to. So that's really the month of November. I'm excited to be here tonight. And tonight, I'm going to talk about risky faith. I'm going to talk about what it looks like to have a faith that takes risks for Jesus. Before I do that, let me pray quick, and then we will dive in. Jesus, thanks for tonight. Thanks that we get to gather here and connect, worship, and talk about you. And God, I pray that tonight you'd be really glorified, that you'd speak through me, and that you'd give me words to say and words not to say, and that, you fill me with your spirit. So we love you. Praise in your name. Amen. All right, so do me a favor. I want you guys to think of the most epic movie you know. The most adventurous, kind of epic movie you know. And then think about the most adventurous and epic scene in that movie, okay? Kind of picture one in your mind. Now, this is kind of the scene that makes your heart pump, right? This is the scene that makes you kind of clench your fist, gets you really, really excited, and makes you want to get up and be like, I want to be like that guy or that girl, right? So let me ask you a question. In that moment, how adventurous is the main character? Probably a lot. Let me ask you another question. In that moment, how safe is that character? Probably not very. See, there's this rarely talked about, but pretty universally true principle at play here, that truly inspiring, truly incredible, truly world-changing things, they almost never happen in a safe, controlled vacuum. Right? Like things that actually matter typically always require risk, maybe even danger. And my guess is that if we were to do like a Survey Monkey tonight and ask who wants their life to be average, right? To not really count for anything significant, I would guess that none of us would say, yeah, I want that to be true. Like, right? We all want our lives to matter. We all want a legacy. We want to have our lives leave a ripple effect for something that's greater than ourselves. And so let me ask you another question. As you think about your life tonight, on a scale from 1 to 10, how risky would you say it is? Let me clarify. I'm not talking about like open up the fridge and, the milk was like 4 days expired, but I'm going to go for it, right? That's pretty risky. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, the empty light came on in my car and I'm going to try to make it to the next exit. That's risky too. That's not what I'm talking about. Here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about legitimate, this is scary. This could really cost me something. I'm way out of my comfort zone, but I'm doing it because I love Jesus type of risk. So let me ask you again. On a scale from 1 to 10, how risky would you say your life is? And are you happy with that number? See, here's what's crazy. Our society values risk. We actually, I would say, crave risk and adventure. Right? Like all the best movies, all the best books, the best video games, they all have an element of adventure and of risk. But when it comes to our most important part of our life, which should be, which is our relationship with God, we kind of tend, if I'm being honest, to kind of choose these safe, kind of boring lives. Like that's kind of our default position. And I'm asking myself the question this week, why? Like why is that our default when everything in us wants to like be seek adventure, have our life be worth something bigger than ourselves? Why do we run to that? And I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one of the big reasons for me is that I forget that God is glorified in our risk taking. Right? Like to despiritualize how that sounds, like God is made famous. God is made more known as we say, Jesus, you're worth taking risks for. Right? Like people will see that and he gets glory. And we forget that. See, here's the thing. The Bible was written by risk takers for risk takers. And really crappy stuff happens when we take this book and we kind of try to mold it and fit it into our American dream version of Christianity, right? Like, check this out. 10 of Jesus' 12 disciples, 10 of 12, were killed for their faith. One of those 12 betrayed Jesus, Judas. So really, 10 out of 11 of Jesus' disciples were killed for their faith in Jesus. Peter, he was crucified upside down by the Roman Emperor Nero. Paul, the Apostle Paul, who wrote like 2/3 of the New Testament, Paul was beheaded. And he wrote this famous verse that we can look at in the book of Ephesians to the church at Philippi, and he says this. He says, I think it's up there, yep. Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I've learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, I know how to abound. In any circumstance, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. And then here's kind of the verse we a lot of us have heard, right? I can do all things through Christ, who strengthens me. Here's the context for this verse. Paul wrote this in prison. He had chosen to leave everything he had and everything he knew. His life was now being supported by other Christians and churches financially. And when he says, I can do all things through Christ, he's saying this. He's saying, Jesus supplies what I need for me to live a radical life for him. When it's hard and when it's easy. Right? But take the risk out of that verse. And this goes up on our Facebook status as us making the basketball team. Right? Do all things through Christ who strengthens. That's what we do. And I'm talking about myself. Right? We do that. We take the risk out. And that's what it becomes. Or check this out. This verse in Jeremiah. Jeremiah was an Old Testament prophet. He wrote the book of Jeremiah. So I guess if you write a book of the Bible, you get to name it after yourself. That's fun. He writes this kind of famous verse. And he says this. This is God talking. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. The context here is God is talking to his people in Israel. He's basically saying this. Hey guys, there's a group of people that don't know anything about me. I'm going to use you to tell them about me. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be safe. But I'm going to use you to make me known. Right? Today, we take this verse, we remove the risk, and this is the verse we use for, don't worry, God will give you the career that you want. Don't worry, God will give you the relationship that you deserve. And again, convicting for me, I'm guessing for a lot of us, but this is what happens when we kind of remove the risk from the Bible and use it in this way. This is a risk-taking, adventure-preparing verse. And so fast forward 2,000 years. And I would say the reality is a lot of us live in a spiritual Disneyland, right? Like I know I do. Like there's actually very little tangible risk to following Jesus. And I'm not one to go out and look for risk. And so kind of I can walk with God and follow Jesus and kind of paint the things I do with spiritual camouflage to make them look risky. But really I'm pretty comfortable and I'm pretty safe. And here's the thing, I think the Bible stops making sense when you remove risk. And I would even go farther and say that following Christ stops making sense when we remove risk. So tonight, I want to look at a passage of the Bible in the book of Acts. Before we go there, here's a little bit of context. One thing I love about the Bible is 66 books, but they're written to different audiences in different times and in different genres. And so the book of Acts It's a historical narrative. What does that mean? It means basically like I'm reading a history book. It'd be like me reading about the Battle of Gettysburg and being like, this is what happened in the Battle of Gettysburg, right? And so here's our tendency. We read the book of Acts, and it's a historical narrative for us to say everything that happened back then should happen exactly the same way it should right now, today, right? Which is kind of like saying the way we fought in the Battle of Gettysburg is the same way we should fight right now, right? There's principles that transfer, but what happened then is really, really unique in the history of the church, right? So this is a really exciting time. This is the time when really Christianity is starting to go crazy and uproot. At this time, Jesus had died on the cross. He'd risen from the dead. He'd appeared to his followers for 40 days, and then he left again. He ascended into heaven. And kind of in between this time, he's promised his followers, hey, if you put your trust in me, I'm going to send you my Spirit, who's actually not going to be right next to you. He's going to live inside of you if you put your faith in me. And I love Acts 1:8. It says, when you receive this Spirit, you'll receive power. Power to what? Power to have great Bible studies. No. Power to have great worship concerts. No. Great, right? But power to be my witnesses. You receive power to be my witnesses, to tell people about me. In Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and actually to the ends of the earth. So that's kind of the context of the book of Acts. And as we're going through it, there's this character called Saul. Saul later becomes Paul, who writes in Philippians 4, we read, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But for a while, Saul was like enemy number one for the Christians. He tortured Christians. He imprisoned Christians, and he actually killed Christians. In fact, in chapter 7 of Acts, it's the first martyr. His name is Stephen. He's stoned to death for his faith. And in Acts 8:1, it says that Saul approved of his execution. So Saul's the dude like in Gladiator that's going like this, right? He's the thumbs down. That's Saul. So that's where we pick up the story in Acts 9. I'm going to kind of fly through it, but we're going to read the story in Acts 9. Okay, the conversion of Saul. But Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, he went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues of Damascus. So not just looking for people, but who are they writing letters to? So I can find the people that are getting the letters. Why? So that if they found any belonging to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. And as he went on his way, he approached Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. And falling to the ground, he heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, who are you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus, whom you're persecuting. But rise and enter the city, and you'll be told what you're to do. The men who were traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the voice but seeing no one. And Saul rose from the ground, and although his eyes were open, he saw nothing. So they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus, and for 3 days he was without sight and neither ate nor drank. Okay, we're going to pause for a second. This is a dramatic encounter with Jesus, right? Like, my guess would be that none of us have had this experience, right? Like, I was traveling to class, walking down Bascom, and all of a sudden there was this light. I saw Jesus, and he started speaking to me, right? Like, it seems dramatic. And yet, this is totally how God works. Right? Like, Saul is still breathing murderous threats against God. God doesn't wait for him to clean his act up before he intervenes. God instead moves towards Saul. And he says, not because of what you've done, but because of who I am. I want you to encounter me. And I actually want to open your eyes spiritually to who I am. Right? Like, this is what God does. This is the kind of God we serve. It's awesome. Let's keep reading. Now, there was a disciple at Damascus named Ananias. The Lord said to him in a vision, Ananias. And he said, here I am, Lord. And the Lord said to him, rise and go to the street called Straight, and at the house of Judas, look for a man of Tarsus named Saul. Because he's praying. And he's seen in a vision a man named Ananias come in and lay his hands on him so that he might regain his sight. But Ananias answered, Lord, I've heard from many about this man, how much evil he's done to your saints at Jerusalem. And he has authority from the chief priests to bind all who call on your name. But the Lord said to him, go, for he is a chosen instrument of mine, to carry my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. For I'll show him how much he must suffer for the sake of my name. Let's pause again. Put yourself in the position of Ananias. Right? Like, Saul is literally like the farthest person from God that you can think of, and then times that by 100, right? And so Jesus appears to Ananias in the vision. He says, hey, go to Saul. And he responds, I think, the way that we kind of would have responded, right? Like, he's kind of like, did you say Sam? Like, I hope you said Sam. I think you said Saul. I'm hoping you didn't say Saul. Do you mean Sam? Do you go to Sam? No, Saul? Okay. Do you know that Saul, like, is the public enemy number one for Christianity? That sounds really, really risky. And what I love is the first words that God says to him. He says, go. He says, I want you to go because I'm going to use you in the life of this person who seems really far off, and I'm going to use him to bring my good news to countless people. So I want you to go. This is kind of crazy. The word go is used 1,542 times in the Bible. I counted to make sure. 1,542 times, right? The word stay, 62. The word go is used 1,542 times in the Bible, and the word stay is used 62 times. And go is actually a pretty big word being two letters, right? Because I think it implies a lot more. It implies don't stay. It implies move. It implies not just concern, but actually action. And it requires trust. Because staying, kind of being comfortable, is kind of our wheelhouse. That's where we like to remain. And so God says, go. And Ananias went when he could have stayed, and God used him. The end of the story is that Saul regains his sight, comes to know Jesus, and the rest is history, right? So a couple things I was thinking about. What would have happened if Ananias had chosen to stay? We don't know, because thankfully he went. But think about this. Saul, turning Paul, was the guy who brought the gospel to the Gentiles. Gentiles are non-Jews. So my guess is in this room tonight, most of us are culturally not Jewish, which means that the gospel has, in a ripple effect, come to us in part because of this risky step of faith that Ananias took. Like, we're a result of this step of faith. And he had a lot to risk in going to Saul. He had a lot to risk. I want to show you guys a video that's been actually pretty impactful in my walk with God. It's by a pastor, author named Francis Chan. Probably familiar, maybe. And he kind of talks more about this element of taking risks in our walk with Jesus. So check it out.
No, for me, growing up, it was, a lot of you guys know my mom died giving birth to me. Then my dad remarried. Then my stepmom died in a car accident when I was 9. Then my dad got married again. Then my dad died of cancer when I was 12. And so I'm in junior high. My mom's dead. My stepmom's dead. My dad's dead. The only close relatives I had were my aunt and uncle, George and Sandra. And then when I was in high school, they got in a fight. And my uncle George shot and killed my aunt. And then stuck the gun to his own head. Killed himself. So I'm 16 years old, and this is life to me, going, man, what's next? Everything seems to be falling apart, and we get a little worried, we get a little scared. And this is what Christians do, you know, they try to serve God, but then things get a little rocky, and things get a little unstable, and so we go, okay, that was nuts. I don't want to live like that. Let me hold on. And this is your routine. This is what so many people do. They go, you know what? I'm not going to try anything crazy. I'm just going to sit here, and I'm just going to hold on. And this is what you look like. You just go, this is what people do. You know what? I'm just going to have my nice little family. We're just going to, we're just going to keep to ourselves. We're going to live in a gated community. I'm going to homeschool my kids, make them wear helmets everywhere. I'm going to... I'm not going to let them outside because sun has bad rays. I'm going to, just on and on and on. And you just live your life in the safety of, I don't want to do anything crazy for God. I just want to, go to church on Sundays and maybe give like 2%. And maybe serve, help the nursery because I feel guilty. And then you do this your whole life. And then you go, your greatest prayer is like, God, you know what? I would love to die in my sleep and not even feel it. And then just go up to heaven. And so you want to die like this. Just in your sleep, boom, right in the middle of a dream, good dream, the dream you're going to heaven and you don't even feel it. And then suddenly you wake up, you stand before the judge and you go. Now, if could you imagine? Could you imagine watching the Olympics? You know? And some girl does that, just gets up there, starts straddling the thing, and then steps off and goes. What is the judge supposed to do on the card? You see, and to me, I go, man, that's the routine that so many Christians are headed for. That's the routine, the boring, I do nothing crazy because I don't want to fall. That's the routine that they're going to live, and then one day it's going to be a shock because they're going to step off that balance beam and realize they're standing before the judge. They're standing before the judge, and you think he's going to look at that routine and go, wow, well done. Well done. You lived the safest life possible. You didn't slip, you didn't fall. See, that's not the life that God's called us to. That's where the majority will head, but I don't want to go where the majority goes.
It's pretty convicting. It's funny, but also convicting, right? I think that's our default. I want to be safe. I know it is for me. So again, I'm thinking why? Why is that our default? I think there's probably hundreds of reasons, but I thought of 3 for me. Maybe these resonate with you as well. Why we stay. Stay when, number 1, we ask the wrong question. We stay when we ask the wrong question. See, for most of us, this is kind of the question we ask. God, what is your will for my life? Not a bad question. God, what's your will for my summer? God, what's your will for my winter break? God, what's your will for my major? Not a bad question, but not a great question. I think a much better question is actually, God, what's your will? And how does my life fit into that? See the difference? One is me, God, what's your will for my life? And the other is, God, what's clearly already your will? And how does my life serve as a vehicle to best do that? Right? And so I don't pretend to know what God's will is for your life, or my life, or your summer, or my summer, or whatever. But I do know that it's God's will that you trust Him. I do know that it's God's will that you talk to people about Jesus, even when it's scary, because He's worth it. Like, I know that it's His will that you pursue fellowship with other people. I know it's His will that you get in the Word, right? I know it's His will that you step out in faith regularly for Him. So, whatever the best way to do those things are, is the better question. God, that's your will. I don't have to question that. What's the best way my life fits into that? And I think we forget to do that. Number 2, we settle for the subtle lie of peace. Right? Like, this is a big one for me. Like, God, I don't have peace doing that specific thing. I don't feel a ton of peace in my heart, right? And that peace is not bad. But if I could be honest with you guys, and I'm not some spiritual giant, but there's been very, 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 very few significant spiritual decisions in my life where I felt a lot of peace. Very few, right? And so again, peace not being bad, I think we can believe that peace is a prerequisite for me stepping out in faith. Let me just ask you a question. Like, how much peace do you think Ananias felt when God told him to go to Saul? I'm guessing not much. And so again, we kind of buy into this subtle lie, like peace is a prerequisite for me to go. And so I think I'm going to stay. Again, for me, for all of us, for me especially. And then the third one is this. We forget about eternity. Right? Like, we become so numb and so nearsighted with what's going on right in front of us that we forget that 99.999999999% of your life will not be here. Right? But 0.000000001% of your life can impact the rest. Like, that's a crazy reality, right? Like, we have this one life to live, to steward, and it can impact eternity. And when I think about that, I'm like, man, why would I not want to risk? Why would I not want to invest for Jesus, right? Like, there's even like this concept, I think, of like a spiritual compound interest. And I'm not like a big financial guy, but this is a concept you learn pretty early in school, right? Like, compound interest basically says, and, I mean, it's pretty basic. So it's like if you're young, like 10 years old, and you start putting away like $20 a week, right? $20 a week, $20 a week. Not very much. By the time you're like 75, you'll have like a ton of money, right? But if you start investing like $200 a week at like age 40, when you get to be 75, you're going to have actually less money than if you started investing less early, right? And so I think our tendency is later on, I will start stepping out in faith in significant ways. As opposed to saying, Jesus, right now, I want to be faithful when you put opportunities in front of me right now. Help me to invest well now. Right? Like help me to have compound interest so that I can see that you're trustworthy and I can take more steps of faith. I want to become rich in heaven terms. Not because you're going to love me more, but because I get to spend my life better for you. And here's kind of the irony of risk-taking, right? Like, the irony is that when we really understand who God is, and when we really understand how much God loves us and how much good he has for us, we're actually not risking anything, right? We're actually telling him, like, these really, really important things, actually the most important things in my life that are significant, I want to trust them to you because you're good, right? And that kind of, even in a weird, ironic way, removes the risk because we're trusting them to him and not us. I would say that growing in our faith is almost predominantly tied to how risky we live for Jesus. Right? Like, growing in our faith is almost predominantly tied to how risky we're living for Jesus. Most times when I'm meeting up with dudes for coffee or hanging out or D-ship or whatever, and I've done this too, right? Like, I'm not feeling very close to God. Most times, not all the time, most times, is one of two reasons. One, there's some serious unconfessed sin. There's something kind of in between my fellowship with God that I just not bringing to him, and it's kind of hurting fellowship. Two, I probably haven't done anything risky for Jesus in a while. Right? Because there's something that happens when we spend love on God in taking risks. It's kind of like a currency, right? And so once we get to a certain point where like we kind of pass into the realm of taking risks for Jesus, and the result is that when we die, when we stand before the judge, we're going to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. So here's what I want you to hear tonight and what I don't want you to hear tonight. What I want you to hear tonight is that Jesus wants to have you live an adventure of following him and trusting him, right? What he doesn't want for you to do is to walk away thinking, I'm more spiritual or more loved because of what I've done for you. Not it. But he's worth it. He's worth taking risks. So kind of as I wrap up, let me ask you guys a couple more, there's a lot of questions. More questions. What if this month for you and for our movement, what if this month for you or our movement was characterized by taking risks? Actually, scratch that. What if this year for you and for our movement was characterized by taking risks? What could God do with that? Talk about it a lot. We ain't a club, we're a movement, right? Clubs are great. I don't want to be part of a Christian club. They're great. We're a movement, right? What could God do as we step out in faith and take risks together? Here's some questions just for you to process. What's a risky step of faith that you can take this week? What about this month? Maybe it's moving towards a classmate. And you're like, I don't actually know where they're at in their relationship with God. But Jesus, you're worth it and you're with me, so I'm going to try. And then the second question, where are you hesitant to take risks for Christ? Where's kind of like the off-limits areas? Like, yeah, open-handed, not here. My summer, that's kind of my thing. Sorry. Whatever that is. What is that and why? Some of you guys are already thinking that you're really creative and smart, and you're thinking, I already know kind of some tangible things I can do to take risks. Let me give you three prepackaged ones, as I call this. First one's this. Come with us to Crew Winter Conference. I don't get on stage and just want to recruit. In fact, I don't really like recruiting. I like shepherding, though. I like talking to people about, I don't know what God's will is for your winter break, but I know it's his will that you trust him and that you live in community and that you invest your break well. So come with us. And there's risk involved, right? Like, it might suck. You might be like, oh, all those videos and stuff, I didn't actually like it, right? Like, that's a risk. I don't think you'd say that, but it's a risk. You might not know people very well. That's risky, right? Even worse, God might do something radical in your life over 4 days, and then you have to, like, respond to that, right? Number 2, this isn't for all of you, but it's definitely for some / a lot of you. Go on summer mission. I don't get more money the more people go on through summer mission. There's something that God does. We put ourselves in positions to hear from him. And I know there's Edgewood in here, and Madison College as well as UW. But here's the reality. Here's what I want to be true of our movement. We're Badgers, and this is for everyone, Eagles, everyone. We're Badgers, and we go. Right? There's a need. We're Badgers, and we go. Because we know the one who tells us to go. Right? So if you're like 20% sure that you're like, I think that could be something I'd be interested in. This could be a risky step of faith. Not for all, but I think for a lot. Fill out the application. Like Alex and Taryn Bell are leaving North Myrtle Beach. Like, how sweet is that? Jordan Mansell and Lindsay Billicky are leaving East Asia. Like, how sweet is that? Right? Like, I would like to go with them. But we're hoping to get a kid by then, so we're not going to. But risk that. And then number 3 is just move towards someone. Move towards someone. Right? Maybe it's a family member over Thanksgiving break. Maybe it's a friend or a classmate. But move towards someone for the sake of Jesus, even though it's risky. So let me pray. Jesus, thanks for tonight. God, I'm really thankful that the Bible is a book written by risk takers for risk takers. And Lord, I just confess that so often my lead foot is comfort. It's calculated risks, where I can kind of paint it as spiritual but don't necessarily trust you. And so, Lord, I pray for everyone here what they would not walk away with is risk equals crew stuff. It's not at all it. I pray they would not walk away with risk makes Jesus love you more. That is not at all it. God, we can't do anything to make you love us more, or anything to make us love you less. Make you love us less. And that is the kind of God that I want to risk things for. Because that's security. We love you, and we praise you.